You expected light, but met silence. You thought truth would roar, but it whispered. When your eyes finally opened, when the veil tore and the world as you knew it fell away, you anticipated fire. Instead, you found stillness, no urgency, no drive, no roadmap forward, just the haunting sense that everything you once lived for no longer fits. And somewhere deep inside, a quiet ache asks, why did the fire go out just as I finally woke up? This is the paradox few speak of, the quiet collapse after the awakening, not a fall from grace, but a fall from illusion. When the layers peel back and the noise dies down, you are left not with mission, but with mystery. And in that mystery, motivation evaporates. The drive that once moved you, approval, ambition, performance, no longer holds. What powered you was never real fuel. It was noise dressed as purpose. And now, in the sacred stillness, that false fire dies. Awakening doesn't arrive with fireworks. It slips in like a whisper and leaves you disoriented. One day you're running your life by all the familiar rules, chasing deadlines, seeking validation, performing your identity. And the next, none of it makes sense. The mask you wore so well starts to feel suffocating. The ladder you were climbing begins to look like a trap. And yet, you can't quite explain what changed. Something inside you simply refuses to play the game anymore. What once felt urgent now feels empty. What once drove you now barely moves you at all. This disorientation is sacred. It's not a detour, it's the doorway. Because when your soul wakes up, the old motivations no longer hold. They lose their grip, not because you're broken, but because you're being broken open. You're shedding the false skin that used to keep you moving, but never kept you alive. The goals, habits, and desires that once stirred you into action now sit hollow, like echoes of someone you used to be. You haven't failed. You've just outgrown a system that was never built to hold your real self. At first, this silence feels like loss. The absence of motivation creates panic. You ask yourself, why can't I care like I used to? Why don't I feel inspired? But the truth is, you are not meant to return to that fire. That fire burned hot, but it burned shallow. It was made of noise, approval, image, ambition. And now the universe is leading you into a deeper flame, one that requires silence, stillness, surrender. This emptiness is not the void, it is the soil. You are in the space between stories. The old narrative has ended, but the new one has not yet begun. That space is uncomfortable, and it's meant to be. You are standing in the raw, open place where identity is rewritten. It is not time to build yet. It is time to be. And being, after years of doing, feels foreign. The silence stretches, and you're tempted to fill it, but don't. Because in that silence, the universe is doing the very thing your old self never had time to do. Listen. Stillness is the beginning of sacred alignment. You are not here to return to who you were. You are here to become who you were always meant to be. And that becoming doesn't begin with energy, it begins with emptiness. Not because the universe is distant, but because it's drawing closer than ever. And in that closeness, everything that isn't truly you must fall away. That is why your motivation is gone. Not because you've lost your way, but because you've stepped onto it. So when stillness sets in and the motivation dissolves, do not rush to revive the old fire. What feels like stagnation is actually purification. You're not just in between two phases of life. You're being emptied so you can be filled differently. The loss of motivation is not a void to escape. It is a vessel being prepared. The universe is not punishing your ambition. It is refining your intention. You've crossed a line within yourself, even if you didn't mean to, and now nothing false can follow you. This is why everything feels so quiet, so hollow, so foreign. The engines that once kept you running, urgency, comparison, the chase for validation, have shut down. And they won't restart because your spirit refuses to return to fuel that always left you dry. You try to spark the old passions, but they lie dormant, unresponsive. Not because you're lazy or lost, but because the system you used to operate within has been dismantled from the inside out. What powered you was never sustainable. It burned bright but fast, loud but shallow, and now your soul wants depth. This holy emptiness is often mistaken for depression, but it is not depression, it is disruption, a sacred one. It's the dismantling of noise to make room for nuance, for discernment, for presence. And that can feel unbearable at first, especially in a world addicted to momentum. But you're not falling behind, you're falling inward. The old hunger is dying, making way for something real. And yes, it aches, it grieves. Because even false identities are hard to release when you've lived in them long enough to call them home. You are being reset, rerouted, and purification always begins with subtraction. The motivations you're losing weren't failures, they were fragments, pieces of a self you had to be for a time. But now that time is done, now the universe is clearing space, not to leave you empty, but to make room for something eternal. What comes next won't burn out. It won't need to be seen to feel valid. It will come quietly, cleanly, and it will last. Not because it demands your energy, but because it aligns with your essence. As purification deepens, what once passed as passion begins to reveal itself as performance. The fire you used to chase wasn't rooted in peace, it was fed by pressure. And now, the universe refuses to let you build with it any longer. The outer life begins to slow, not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're finally learning to live from the inside out. No more pretending, no more pushing, no more chasing shadows of worth in the eyes of others. The performance is dying, and in its place presence is being born. This transition can feel invisible to the world, but undeniable to the soul. You no longer feel drawn to impress. The urgency to explain yourself fades. The desire to be seen becomes strangely quiet. And while others may still expect the old you to show up, you know that version has already started to dissolve. You are being led into a new way of existing, one that doesn't depend on the stage, the spotlight, or the applause. What moves you now isn't the pressure to keep up. It's the whisper that says, "Be still and dwell." Presence doesn't arrive with clarity. It arrives with capacity, the capacity to sit with discomfort, to listen beneath the noise, to walk without knowing. It's not about having the answers, but allowing space for the real questions to surface. This is not the death of your purpose. It's the death of the performance that distorted it. You're no longer a servant to outcomes. You're a sanctuary for presence. And in that stillness, you begin to hear a rhythm deeper than motivation, truer than emotion, a quiet knowing that doesn't need proof to move. When presence begins to take the place of performance, something strange happens. You start to feel like a stranger to yourself. The mask is gone, but so is the name you used to answer to. The wilderness is where this shift fully unfolds. It is the sacred space between who you were and who you are becoming. Not a punishment, but a passage. Here you no longer move by instinct. The habits that once shaped you no longer apply. And in that void, the ego panics, searching for something to cling to. But the soul, if you let it, waits. In the wilderness, you begin to see just how much of your identity was built on survival. How much was crafted to be loved, accepted, applauded. Even the versions of you that looked holy, driven, admirable, now feel like shadows. They served a purpose once, but now they fall away, thread by thread. Not because they were evil, but because they're no longer needed. The universe will not allow what was built on fear to survive in a future built on truth. So you grieve, and that grief is not weakness, it's reverence for the self you carried as far as you could. The unraveling isn't sudden, it's slow and deliberate. There are days when clarity flickers like a match, only to fade again into darkness. You try to return to what you know, to pick up the old dreams and goals, but they no longer respond. It's as if your soul has turned away from anything that isn't authentic. That refusal is grace. You're not being defiant, you're being refined. The wilderness isn't trying to break you, it's trying to reveal you. The you that was buried beneath layers of expectation, achievement, and adaptation. In this space, the question changes. You no longer ask, "How do I become who I need to be?" Instead, you begin to ask, "Who have I always been beneath all this striving?" You start to feel it in glimpses, the unarmored self, the essence that doesn't perform, doesn't prove, doesn't pretend. You begin to realize that identity was never something to create. It was always something to uncover. And every false layer that falls away brings you closer to that unshakable core. This is the holy work of the wilderness, to strip you down, not so you'll feel small, but so you'll remember what was never yours to carry. The masks, the metrics, the borrowed dreams, they dissolve, and what remains is not a polished version of you, but a present one, whole, honest, hidden perhaps, but never again hollow. Because once your identity is reclaimed in silence, no noise in the world can steal it again. Once the wilderness has done its work, once the false identities fall and the inner soil is cleared, something begins to stir. Not loudly, not all at once, but subtly, like the first light of dawn breaking through a long, dark night. You don't feel a surge of ambition return, nor the old urgency to chase after anything. Instead, you feel a quiet pull, a resonance rather than a roar. It doesn't demand action, it invites alignment. The holy fire doesn't descend with force, it rises slowly from the silence you've learned to endure. This new fire is different. It doesn't burn for applause or run on adrenaline. It does not ask to be seen, it asks to be honored. It's a flame that flickers with peace rather than pressure. You move because something within you hums with truth, not because something outside you is shouting for attention. There's no rush to create or prove, only a gentle unfolding of a deeper obedience. And when you do take action, it flows, not from strategy, but from stillness. What you once had to push now moves on its own. This is the kind of fire that lasts. It does not need an audience. It does not rise and fall with your moods. It is the quiet endurance of something real, born not from striving, but from surrender, carried not by charisma, but by character. And the most powerful part? You may not even notice it growing until others begin to sense it in you. But you will know, because this time, what burns inside you is not borrowed. It is yours, and it cannot be extinguished. As the quiet fire takes hold, you begin to realize, this is not something you merely carry, this is something you become. The line between your spirit and the flame starts to blur. It no longer feels like you're drawing energy from an external source. The fire is now within your bones, woven into your being. You don't wake up wondering what to do, you wake up in tune with who you are. The fire has become identity. It does not need to flare up to prove it exists. Its presence is constant, even in silence. What once felt like absence now feels like intimacy. You no longer wait for signs to know you're on the right path. You walk the path because it feels like home. The universe is not outside, directing your steps from afar. It is alive within you, pulling you into alignment with each breath. Your actions are not performed, they are revealed. Your steps are not strategic, they are surrendered. And with every quiet yes, with every moment you honor peace over pressure, the flame grows stronger, steadier, deeper. Now you move through the world without needing to announce yourself. There is a strength in you that does not shout, but cannot be shaken. You do not need to convince anyone of your calling, you simply walk in it. And though the world may not understand your stillness, though they may misinterpret your quiet confidence for passivity, heaven knows what you carry. Because the fire that once flickered uncertainly now moves with authority. It leads without forcing, it speaks without noise, and it creates not from scarcity, but from sacred overflow. You are no longer looking for the fire, you are the fire, not because you lit it, but because you allowed everything false to burn away. The wilderness shaped you, the silence refined you, the emptiness prepared you, and now your very presence carries weight, not because of what you say or produce, but because of who you've become. The flame no longer rests on your hands, it lives in your walk, your gaze, your stillness. You are not chasing purpose anymore. You are living it, quietly, fully, faithfully. So when you ask why the universe takes your motivation after spiritual awakening, remember, it's because you are no longer meant to be fueled by illusion. The fire you once followed was tied to identity, image, and effort. But you have outgrown that fuel. You've been rewired to burn differently, to move differently, to live from presence rather than pressure. The silence was not abandonment, it was realignment. The emptiness was not punishment, it was preparation. The universe didn't strip you of drive to leave you aimless. It emptied you so that you could finally hear the truth that only stillness can carry. You did not lose motivation. You shed everything that once masqueraded as it, and what now burns inside you is not fragile, not fleeting, it is holy. This fire cannot be manufactured or manipulated. It can only be revealed through surrender. So walk in it. Let it lead. Let it shape your rhythm, your voice, your vision. You are not waiting to become something. You already are. The flame that rises in you now is not for the crowd. It is for your calling, and the universe did not awaken you to perform. It awakened you to become.